We are halfway through 2023 so far, and while we've already talked about my favorite movies so far for the year, let's talk about my favorite television shows for the year, because there's a lot. I've so far watched 18 new shows, which is more than I usually do for TV, but I'm trying to get better at it, so let's dive into this list. If you don't want to know all the TV shows that I've watched, I will be actually ranking every TV show I've watched at the end of this year, so make sure to follow for that. But at my number 10 is Secret Invasion. I know a lot of people have been kind of mixed on this one. A lot of people don't really like it. They think it's kind of boring. Then on the other half, a lot of people really dig it. I'm in the camp that I'm really digging this show. I actually think this is one of my favorite things that I've watched in the MCU. Again, it might all fall apart. Episode 3 I didn't think was the greatest thing I've seen, but it was a little bit too rushed. I think the first 2 episodes, though, did sell me on this concept, and I'm very excited to see what the rest of the show has for us to endear. Then at my number 9 is Shrinking. This is Apple TV's brand new show with Jason Segel and Harrison Ford. And Harrison Ford was starring in it, so I had to watch it, and it is absolutely just as charming and delightful that you expected. It has a very much a Ted Lasso kind of feel to it all, and that makes sense because it is from some of the writers of Ted Lasso, and overall, I can't wait for the next season of Shrinking. I think this was such an adorable little show. I think one of the things that really sticks with me so much within Shrinking is the fact that Harrison Ford gives such an incredible performance in here. And while he is more of a side role, the way that they actually intersect and bring all the characters into each other's lives and as well as move them around really makes sense. And I think for anyone kind of dealing with a lot of issues in their lives, this is a good show that'll make you laugh, it'll make you maybe cry, it'll make you feel a lot of emotions. My number 8 is Poker Face. This is Rian Johnson's brand new show that premiered on Peacock this year. I've never ever gotten a streaming service just for one show, but when you say Rian Johnson's doing a show, it makes me kind of have to be interested. And so we got Peacock, and I loved Poker Face. I loved this show top to bottom. Not every episode was perfect, but I love the execution and the idea of it all, of about one person who can tell who's lying. Like, that's their power. If someone lies to them, they instantly know it. And that's really unique because you don't get that in a lot of different shows nowadays. And to say the least, the way that it works and the way that the structure kind of plays out is the first episode's very much about this character, kind of seeing where they're coming from, how this drama works. But every episode after that, as they go out on their own adventure, and the first 20 to 30 minutes of the episode is always about the side characters, the guest characters, who's in this character, how are they affecting their lives, and the back half is how does she intersect into their lives? How does she find out this mystery? How does it become a murder mystery show every single week for the most part? I love that. And as well as the tonal shifts, the directions, all sorts of things like that, every single thing in Poker Face really worked for me. And I loved my experience with the show. I cannot wait for season 2. And my number 7 is Ted Lasso season 3. Ted Lasso has been one of the most charming shows that I've watched in my entire life. It's just one of those shows that you could put on. There's not really an enemy of sorts. There is, of course, always a villain. But it's one of those shows that you watch and you just smile and you enjoy and you completely just forget about all your worries. And season 1 was the best. Season 2 was good. And season 3 might be the least favorite of all the seasons, but it's still a Ted Lasso season, and it's damn great. And I still thought that the finale was great as well. There's some things that feel a little bit rushed, but I still have my prediction that they're going to bring back all these characters besides Ted himself. And I just found that Ted Lasso season 3 was a great conclusion to his character arc as well, and specifically what he needed to do with his entire life. And I think looking back at the entire show, it does make for a very important watch, and I think Jason Sudeikis absolutely nailed this entire thing. My number 6, and if you asked me, hey Zach, like, where do you think this would place next year in your ranking? I'd probably say, oh, it's probably going to be top 3. The fact that this is only my number 6 is shocking, and that is Barry season 4. This is the final season of Barry. I've loved this show top to bottom, and I can't believe it's over, but the way that Bill Hader ended it was something of a miracle. And it's something that drastically was not in my expectations or anyway in my thoughts, but the way that he took it feels real, it feels topical, and it feels like an entire satire towards tons of things that premiere on Netflix nowadays. I'm trying not to get into spoilers in case you haven't watched this show, but I highly recommend Barry. Even though the show is very changed in its last 2 seasons from being more of a comedy to a dramedy, it's more of just a drama now. Season 4, I thought, took a lot of big risks, particularly in a giant time jump in the middle of the season, that for me, worked in it. I feel like maybe another season would have really helped some of the pacing in this. That's the only reason this is a little bit lower on my list, is the pacing is not the greatest. It feels a little tad rushed at times, but it's hard for me to deny that Bill Hader didn't absolutely nail this, and I can't wait to see what everyone else on this show goes out and does next. Primarily, I mean Sarah Goldberg, who is absolutely a triumphant, amazing actress, and she gave it her all in this show. And my number 5 is Beef. This show I expected to be good. It's an A24 show. It stars Steven Yeun. It has 2 people who are going to be doing a Marvel Studios movie next year, and I've never heard of them, so apparently Marvel knew about them. And it also stars the likes of like Ali Wong, Joseph Lee, and Young Massino. And for me, I went into the show expecting it for it to be good, and I walked out going, holy crap, this is like one of the greatest things I've watched this year. I think this is actually one of my favorite Netflix exclusive things that they've ever released. And Beef, for me, you know, the fact that it all takes place from 2 people who run into a road rage incident where they just like hate each other instantly, and this thing slowly starts to consume them. But it's the way that you start to learn more about their lives. What are they dealing with internally? What's going on with them internally? How are they feeling? All these little drastic things, all these drastic measures, all these actions that they start to take, all these thought-provoking things, and the way that their lives really start to come into fruition because of this is, for me, one of the most touching moments that I've watched this year. And alongside that, this show is very drastically different from every episode, and particularly when you think it's going to go one way, it switches up and goes the next way. And Steven Yeun is amazing in this. Ali Wong is great in this. Joseph Lee, I actually thought was one of the biggest surprises in this because I've never really seen him in much. Young Mazzino, I actually thought was great and could have been an easy throwaway character, but again, segues and gets brought into this entirely. Every character is very fleshed out in here. And this is a show that really touches on religion, depression, anxiety, anger, every emotion that you can kind of feel. In a way, this is kind of the Inside Out in live action, but just you're not seeing the emotions in your head, you're seeing how they come out into fruition. So I love this show. And my number 4 for, yes, I watch anime. My number 4 is My Hero Academia, the brand new season this year. I was blown away by this entire series. I sat there, and I've always loved My Hero Academia, but the last season of this show I thought was completely disappointing. It was very lackluster, and I didn't really know how to feel about it. So jumping into this new season, I didn't really have that high of expectations, and I was kind of getting out of my mode of loving My Hero Academia, and thankfully I went into this show, and I freaking loved it. This new season was so freaking incredible. And, you know, I think a lot of people were hyping up that last season was very much the calm before the storm, and it really does feel like that. I still don't think it makes that last season better by any means, because it was really much just used as setup, but in some ways this season was also used as setup for the future, primarily in the way that they kind of discuss and dissect into certain things. I love what they did with Deku in here. I think it's his best season yet. The way that Bakugo and Todoroki are all used in an essence, but it really is Deku's story and how he is feeling like he is coming into this world, his vigilante era, and the action, the excellent animation, everything in here just really excited me, and it's one of my this is one of my favorite anime series of all time, and it was the reminder that I needed of why I love My Hero Academia so much. And my number 3 now is Succession Season 4. This is also another final season, and Succession for me was a show I actually had never watched until this year, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna binge the whole thing before season 4 and try and finish it, and I caught up literally like the week prior, and this is one of the best binges I had ever watched. I'm actually contemplating on rewatching it all over again, because the dialogue, all of that stuff, the writing, the story moments, the frustration of seeing characters, it's some of the best that I've seen in television. But it's also the performances from everyone. Like, Jeremy Strong is so freaking incredible in this. I think one of the things that actually really hits me hard for this is that at one point when you're watching this show, you'll hate one character, then the next season you'll like kind of come to understand and love them. And one of those 2 characters that I really came to feel that on was Sarah Snook and Matthew McFadden, who play Tom and Shiv in here, who I think in some ways is the heart of the Succession story, and primarily where you see everything kind of come down to in the end. I thought both of them were absolutely phenomenal in this, and I absolutely was taken back by, again, both of their performances. Kieran Culkin is also just great as Roman. Brian Cox is amazing. Alan Ruck is great, but this is just a show that every single one of the performances just adds on top of the other and climbs and climbs and climbs, and this last season was without a doubt fantastic. I will go as far to say pacing issues as well for this. I do feel like there could have been at least one more season. My number 2, though, and this is actually, I'm going to be point blank, I have not finished yet, but I only have 2 episodes left, and it's really hard for me to tell. Like, it's really hard for me to think that this will deter from not being in my top 5 at the end of the year. And as of right now, it's a little bit recency bias, but my number 2 is The Bear Season 2. I think The Bear, for me, the first season was kind of like a big surprise. I didn't watch it initially because I thought it was going to get canceled because no one was talking about it, and thankfully it didn't. And now Season 2 is like one of the biggest FX and Hulu premieres of all time. And for good measure it is. Because every episode this season did exactly what I wanted it to do. It dove into every character a little bit more. And I'm trying not to get emotional because episode 7 for me is actually one of the best directed things. And for me, I think it's actually my personal favorite of the season. I know a lot of people will probably talk about episode 6 because of all the cameos and kind of all sorts of things like that. But episode 6 is also phenomenally written. And it's intense, and it feels like that one-shot take, but it's not all in a one-shot take. And The Bear is just one of those shows that gets people, gets humanity down to its core. And this season really and primarily dives into each character and what their issues are that they're dealing with inside themselves and internally, and the struggles, and the way that it's all centered around and built around the opening of the Bear restaurant. That is what I love the most about this, and the way that it kind of really formulates and comes about into such a beautiful degree. And the first season was very much about one guy and, you know, some of his coworkers and how he's being brought back into this restaurant life that his brother had left behind. But then this season is just wanting to give more character development to each of them. And Jeremy Allen White is absolutely incredible in here. I've always been a fan of him since Shameless, and this is truly his tour de force. Ebon Moss-Bacharach, he is the main star of episode 7 for me. I think this guy deserves the world. He's incredible. Ayo Edebiri, I loved her in the first season. I love how much she's blown up from here. Lionel Boyce is great. Liza Zayas is great. Abby Elliott's great. I mean, the cast goes on and on from there, from how incredible every single person is. But the guest stars this season are phenomenal. And if you still don't know some of the cameos in here, I don't want to get into it. You just need to be surprised. My number 1 show of this year, and honestly, a lot of this is biasness because I think The Bear might be like on an actual critiqual moment. I think that, I don't even know if that was a damn word, but I think The Bear might be the best made show of the year, but on a biasness, I gotta keep this at my number 1 for now, and that's The Last of Us. The Last of Us Season 1 is, for me, everything that I wanted the show to be and a little bit more, because for people who don't know, my favorite video game of all time is the first 2 Last of Us games. I say first 2 because there's rumors that 3 might be happening, and I don't know how to feel about that, and I didn't really know how to feel about the show. I was a little bit nervous going in, and they honestly executed in a lot of different ways. In some ways, it's pretty much paint by paint the same exact story from the first game, but in other ways it's not, and they detour it a lot, and that's okay, because what it gave me was a new appreciation for certain characters that I didn't really care about in the original game, and made me love them a little bit more. Primarily episode 3, which is the most, you know, divided of many fans, whether it is because of the context of the story or because people just didn't like that something happened to one character. Again, I'm trying not to spoil it because I don't, you know, maybe you haven't played The Last of Us yet, or maybe you haven't watched the show yet. All I know is that this show hit me in a lot of different ways, and in some of the best moments from the video game, it expanded and made those moments better. There's one discussion between Joel and Ellie that, you know, Ellie kind of asks him a question, and Joel responds in a way that nearly broke my heart. And if you don't know what the scene I'm talking about, it's a sequence of them walking through this military camp, and them sitting on this like rebar, and they're just having a conversation about this thing on Joel's head, this scar. That moment broke me in so many ways that I didn't expect to be, and I absolutely love The Last of Us show. I think it's one of the best written shows I've ever watched, and if you haven't watched The Last of Us yet, you absolutely should. My top 10 favorite shows so far for 2023. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below. Which shows are your favorites for this year? Which ones have I not watched yet? I do want to kind of give a lowdown of every show I have watched so far, so just so you know. I've watched Star Wars Vision Season 2, The Witcher Season 3, Dead City, The Walking Dead, Bad Batch Season 2, Mando Season 3, The Crowded Room on Apple TV, The Night Agent Season 1, and You Season 4. Again, let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are on all of those shows have I missed that I haven't seen yet that I should. Let me know down below, and of course, until next time, stay classy.